RP X, RP Peep, RP Mac. You ain't having no relax. This shit got me tearing up.
What's good, y'all? I'm Jared. Today I'm about to check out 10 wrestlers who were glad they left WWE. One wrestler particularly comes to mind is Cody Rhodes, and another one is John Moxley. Both didn't really have the most successful career in WWE as far as like being pushed creatively and letting their in-ring work speak for themselves, and also CM Punk as well. So let's check out who else was glad to leave that they left WWE.
They say that the grass is always greener on the other side. This whole expression applies to a number of former WWE superstars who decided to leave Vince McMahon's company. The reasons that a superstar may wish to depart from WWE vary, but it usually comes down to their dislike of how they're being used on television. The WWE superstar will then try their luck in a different wrestling company in the hope that another wrestling promoter realizes their true potential. But which ones were happy that they left? Well, join us now as WrestleMania looks at 10 wrestlers who were glad they left WWE. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Number 10, The Big Show. Now, before February 2021, it would have been safe to say that The Big Show was going to remain a WWE talent for life. However, when it was announced that The Big Show had signed for AEW and he would be using his real name, Paul White, fans were quite rightly shocked. Now, it turned out that White was extremely unhappy with how the WWE were using him. He believed that WWE were disrespecting a man of his legendary status, and they couldn't come to terms on a new contract. White has been public in the fact that he has been genuinely happy with how his AEW run has been going so far, and has zero regrets about leaving Vince McMahon's promotion. White currently acts as a commentator for the AEW Dark Elevation show, and he's made his in-ring debut for AEW at the 2021 All-Out pay-per-view. Number 9, Justin Gabriel. Justin Gabriel was so dissatisfied with how his WWE career was going that he actually walked out in 2015. This took place during a Raw show, and Gabriel had the mindset of if he wasn't going to be used, there was no point of him being backstage for the show. He was released shortly afterwards, which a number of fans saw as a missed opportunity for WWE, as Gabriel was incredibly talented. But the WWE just didn't want to push him in any meaningful manner. Since his departure, he's had successful runs in Ring of Honor and New Japan Pro Wrestling, and there appears to be no regrets from Gabriel in his decision to walk out of WWE. Number 8, The Revival. Both members of The Revival have stated in a number of interviews since leaving WWE that they were both incredibly unhappy there. Cash Wheeler and Dax Harwood, who now use the collective name of FTR, have stated that WWE's mistreatment of the tag division of Vince McMahon taking them seriously led to their departure. This, combined with the fact that McMahon wanted to turn the talented duo into comedy characters, certainly helped in FTR's decision to leave the company and sign for AEW. Since joining AEW, FTR have had a number of classic tag team matches which have been acclaimed by the fans. The duo has also won the AEW tag titles and more recently the AAA tag titles. Number 7, Sting. Sting vs Seth Rollins at the 2015 Night of Champions pay-per-view would act as Sting's last ever WWE match. Sting was injured in the match, which resulted in him retiring from in-ring competition. The issue was that Sting believed that he could still wrestle cinematic-style matches at a high level, and one of the matches that Sting wanted to have was against The Undertaker. In 2020, Sting would depart from the WWE, and in a number of public interviews, he would claim that it wasn't working out in WWE. Sting, shortly after his WWE departure, would decide to sign for AEW, and since then, Sting has been used as a manager for Darby Allin, as well as compete in a number of well-received matches. In AEW, Sting feels valued and appreciated, which is all a wrestling icon ever wanted. Number 6, CM Punk. When rumors began to circulate that CM Punk wanted to return to the world of pro wrestling, fans were under the impression that Punk would be returning to WWE. But Punk and WWE had a ton of bad blood following his walkout in 2014, and all the key figures that Punk had a lot of resentment for were still running the company. Punk also claimed that both his mental and physical health drastically improved since leaving WWE in 2014, and it would make sense for him to go back to Vince's company. In the summer of 2021, to the delight of wrestling fans, Punk decided to sign for AEW. He liked how AEW was operating and believed he would be a great fit for the company. Punk has had a number of matches since signing for the company, and he's currently helping it act as a great alternative product for those who have fallen out of favour of the WWE product. During an October 2021 interview with Dad's End, Punk stated that he loves working in AEW and that if AEW wasn't around, he likely wouldn't have wrestled ever again. The former champion revealed, "It happened at the right time and timing is everything. There's a lot of stuff that I had to heal on my own. I'm happy AEW are around now because I really don't know if I'd have gone there sooner. I'm not so worried about the past. I'm not so worried about the future. I'm worried about the present. That's where I'm at now. I'm worried about the fans in the building. If they're having a good time, if they're going to tell their friends that they had a great time and they're going to come back next time, I want to make sure they're leaving with a giant smile on their face."
That's what's up.
Number 5, Cody Rhodes.
Cody Rhodes, first person I named.
Cody Rhodes decided to take the biggest risk of his career. He was going to leave WWE in order to rekindle his love for pro wrestling. Rhodes was notably unhappy in WWE, and
then he wrote a list of all the wrestlers who he wanted to face.
And Rhodes simply wanted out.
The whole tour.
Shortly after his release was granted, Rhodes would have a run in virtually every other major wrestling company. Then in 2018, Rhodes made the biggest career move possible. He would become one of the EVPs of a brand new wrestling company, AEW, and since then, Rhodes has acted in the established corporate role as well as continuing to be in-ring talent. Number 4, Batista. When Batista decided to leave the WWE in 2010, he took an enormous gamble. Batista was one of the WWE's biggest stars, and he was leaving behind a huge paycheck to pursue a career in Hollywood. For the first few years in his pursuit of acting roles, Batista struggled so much so that he recently revealed that he actually became broke. However, when he was cast in Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, his fortunes began to change. Batista became one of the most sought-after actors in Hollywood, and as a result of his performance in Guardians of the Galaxy, he would be cast in a number of high-profile movies. Batista actually agreed to return to WWE in 2014 for another run, but this was handled poorly, and Batista was miscast as a babyface. He would have one final run in 2019 and would have his retirement match at WrestleMania 35 in a match against Triple H. Batista also had criticisms in relation to his final run. He would state that WWE's creative process was a nightmare and would never return for another match. Number 3, Chris Jericho. Considered to be one of the greatest superstars in WWE history, it came as a huge surprise when Jericho decided to leave the WWE in 2018. The reason that Jericho left the WWE was because he felt disrespected. At WrestleMania 33, he and Kevin Owens were initially supposed to main event the pay-per-view. However, this was changed and the two were moved to the second match on the show. Jericho decided to have a run in New Japan Pro Wrestling and then would become one of the first major superstars to sign an AEW contract. Jericho has had immense success in Tony Khan's promotion. He was the inaugural AEW World Champion and has had a number of memorable matches and moments which have positively contributed to his legacy. Jericho has been publicly declaring on his podcast how happy he is with his AEW run, and during an interview with TV Insider, this is what the first ever WWE Undisputed Champion had to say in relation to his time in AEW so far. One of the reasons I wanted to come to AEW was the challenge of building this organization from scratch. 3 months into our TV existence, we signed a huge extension because of what we had accomplished, which was kind of on my back for the first few months. Now they're spread to so many other people. All the pressure and spotlight isn't only on Chris Jericho, which is great. That was always my goal. I'm AEW all in, all the way at this point. I can't see myself going anywhere else. Number 2, Daniel Bryan.
Of course.
Following Daniel Bryan's main event match at WrestleMania 37 and the subsequent career versus title match against Roman Reigns a number of weeks later on SmackDown, Bryan decided to part ways with WWE. Now, although Bryan was treated well by WWE, Bryan wanted to push himself to the limit, and the deal that AEW were offering was simply far too good to turn down. Bryan, who now uses his real name of Bryan Danielson in AEW, has had classic after classic in AEW, including a match with Kenny Omega which was rated 5 stars by Dave Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. And number 1, Dean Ambrose. Dean Ambrose has never been afraid to voice his opinion, and since leaving the WWE in 2019, he stated how he couldn't wait to leave WWE once his contract finally expired. Ambrose cited mental and physical reasons for his WWE departure, and he stated that their creative process needs a huge overhaul. Ambrose now wrestles under the name Jon Moxley, and since leaving the WWE, he's truly begun to live his best life. Moxley signed a contract with AEW in May of 2019, and since signing for the company, he's been presented as one of their top stars. Moxley's AEW contract also allows him to work selected independent dates. This meant that Moxley is now able to do the type of wrestling which he's truly passionate about. But there you have it, folks. 10 wrestlers who are glad they left the WWE. Be sure to leave your comments down below. I'll see you.
That's a great video, man. I know for a fact Cody Rhodes, CM Punk, Jon Moxley, all were glad that they left WWE because CM Punk for one, was unhappy. He was hurt. They wouldn't give him the time off. They put him in dangerous ass matches against dangerous opponents, which ultimately led him to, and then creatively, it wasn't working out with Vince because he kept getting promised the time off and Vince never would give him time off. So it ultimately led him to kind of lose his love for wrestling, and also just have a hatred for it, and his wanting to leave the company altogether, leave the wrestling business altogether, led to him walking out in 2014 after the Royal Rumble. Cody Rhodes, another one, they put him in that Stardust character. They wouldn't really elevate his character as well. I guess they wanted to keep him as Stardust, and he wanted to be back, transition into Cody Rhodes, or being another character, like an alternate version of his Cody Rhodes character. And he just took the risk of walking out and seeing how the independent circuit works, and ultimately led to him being the executive vice president of AEW and being a whole nother help building a whole nother company that could compete with the past company that he worked for. And it was it's incredible, man. I hope y'all liked the video. Thank y'all for watching, man. I love y'all. Peace.